Hello, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Eiderstein. Thank y'all for joining me again as we do the review of the first chapter of the book we just got into. I did the reading of the first chapter last week, and the book that we are doing is... Let's get you into focus here. Maybe. Over there. There we go. There we are. It was I Was a Pagan by V.C. Kitchen. I guess the V stands for Victor. I'm not sure what the C stands for. But this is a first edition, but not first printing. I looked it up, but it's not first printing. But that's okay. So that is what we will be going over today is the first chapter. This is a facsimile reprint of it. And they called it Believing in False Gods. I Was a Pagan by V.C. Kitchen. I'm not sure where they got the Believing in False Gods part from. If it may have been on the original dust jacket or something, but either way. So I'm looking forward to going over this, though. This was a very enlightening book for me to read, And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It gave me a lot of perspective. It gave me a lot of understanding. And I found his experience to be invaluable to the actual spiritual progress that I have pursued. So, what we're going to do is, I hope y'all got the chance to watch or listen to at least the chapter read. We are available on YouTube. We are available on Spotify. We're available on Apple Podcasts as well. Please go ahead and check us out there. Give us a like, give us a follow. And the video podcasts are available on YouTube and Spotify. There's also a Facebook page for you to, you can go give us a like and a follow, and you'll get the newest episodes shared with you every single time. So I appreciate everyone's support that's checking this out. So there is a audio only that goes up onto YouTube as well, and I think the Apple Podcast is audio only. The video doesn't get shared over from the Spotify platform. So if you're just looking to listen, you can check it out there as well. All right. And I have a playlist for the audio onlys as well on YouTube. So, all right. So we did the reading last week. Again, I'll just review what this is. This is V.C. Kitchen. I Was a Pagan. We read chapter 1, The Business of Chasing False Gods, and it has a theme under each one. I'll show you the page, the opening page here. You see that The Business of Chasing False Gods is the title of the chapter, but underneath there's a word there, paganism. All right. So that's each one has its own, right, which is the theme of that chapter. So the theme of this chapter is paganism. And I really enjoy how it just opens up, right, because it talks about that empty and false pursuit of material things and ego-driven things here, So I'll be quoting regularly from the chapter as we go through it, but I like his description of life. The numbers weren't exactly the same for me, but they were close. At 20, life looked like a high adventure, intriguing and indecorous. At 30, at 20, it looked like a high adventure, intriguing and indecorous. I'm not sure how the right emphasis on that word. At 30, it looked like a high endeavor, socially and economically important. By 40, however, I grew highly dubious. Life seemed to have lost flavor on both counts. It was then that I met the Oxford group, right? So and the Oxford group, for those who don't know, they were a group that had the original development of a step process, from my understanding. They had a certain structure for a recovery. And when I say recovery, it's they didn't consider it recovery. It's just more so a set structure for right living. a spiritual development group, and the original founders of Alcoholics Anonymous participated in the Oxford group before they actually branched off into Alcoholics Anonymous. Or no, they didn't branch off; they just founded Alcoholics Anonymous as its own thing, and it took a lot of lessons, perspective, and understanding from that movement, the Oxford group. So, what he's saying here is he tried to pursue. Sorry, there's a mosquito flying around here. All right, looks like he's gone. He lived his life the way he was going to live his life, and when those vain and selfish, self-centered pursuits ended up failing, and he came to that point he lost the flavor of life, which so many of us, I think that's a great way he worded it. Lost the flavor of life. The excitement, the drives that we selfishly pursue in the beginning, and then we try to shift it around to try to find different meaning and purpose, and it just doesn't work. And we get to this point where most will call a midlife crisis, where we try to find actual meaning in life, right? And then when he got to that point, that crossroads, he came in contact with the Oxford group. So, just a really cool way to open it up, and something that's relatable, I guess. So, the next part about this that I really find intriguing is the very next paragraph is how so many people identify. I'll just read it. At this time, I think I would have described myself as white, married, and a Christian. I mean, pretty standard, right? Nothing out of the norm here, nothing extravagant, nothing that's earth-shattering. But the honesty that comes in this next sentence, and I'm not going to tear apart every single or investigate every single paragraph in this book as we go through, but these opening paragraphs are very important. Actually, I was somewhat tarnished and discolored, right? So, as opposed to identifying as a white man, he was tarnished and discolored. I mean, I can relate to that. When I first was getting sober, at the end of my drinking and drugging days, before I started pursuing a spiritual way of living, I was literally discolored. I was gray or yellow. Like my body was not responding well to the lifestyle I was living. So it's funny to me that he says I was somewhat tarnished and discolored. I relate to that. Married in name only. That's a pretty honest statement, right? And one that many people, I'm sure, can relate to. That it was just a for show type of thing. It was something to say of the wife of, right? Or the husband of. And it was really not something foundational. It was a title only. So married in name only. And then very much a pagan. Now, I think why I chose this book, I guess, and to do next, and why I'm going to do the entirety of the book, not just select chapters like I did out of Emmett Fox's Sermon on the Mount. And I chose such a thick book, actually. It's 200 and some pages, 250 some pages. So it's going to take us a while to get through, is because that statement right there, and very much a pagan. There's a lot of people out here, including myself for a long time, and probably on the rare day still, without realizing, because things develop, things change, and things manifest in different ways. But I would have never identified myself as a pagan, right? And then he defines why he said that afterwards. Pagan is a man who spends his time chasing false gods. And I had spent 40 years of my time in chasing pleasure, possessions, power, position, and applause. Now, if what you prioritize in life falls under any of those categories, he's stating, and my opinion is, I agree with him, that you are a pagan. Now, because that is the master you're serving, right? A pagan is a man who spends his time chasing false gods. False gods. That means we devote our time, our energy, our resources, emotions to these things, right? We demand them to serve us and feed us in some way, right? I need those things almost, right? So they become priorities over your belief in actual God, whatever that might. He identified as a Christian, right? But he identified as a Christian, but he was actually a pagan because he worshipped pleasure, possessions, power, position, and applause. That is something many, many people, if they were honest with themselves, can relate to. Or at least I can. I'll speak for myself, I guess, right now. But the reality of that statement, the honesty of that statement, the experience that is so generously given that informed that statement is so, so important. It's a humbling thing to actually take a look at, and it's a difficult thing to admit is true, right? Because it takes a level of honesty, it takes a level of willingness to change it, right? Because if you identify that you're a servant of your possessions, right? If you're not going to change it, what's it going to do for you? Right? If you're not going to do something about it, so to be able to write this and to put that out there, and it was so honestly and candidly, and own it is huge. So that's why I chose this book, was this understanding and this perspective, right? That we serve many things we don't even realize that we're serving. Okay. So these are material things, things external to ourselves, in the sense of, we have pleasure, right? We want to physically feel pleasure, possessions, physical items, power, right? We want to have influence over other people, right? I pursued that. I put that as a priority. I wanted to be able to have that impact and influence on others that made me feel like I had a sense of value and worth. Position, I liked to be able to brag about my position. I liked to be able to use my position as a tool to influence others, or to command respect or favor, right? And then applause. Everyone likes to be liked. Everyone likes to be validated and admired, and people will do a lot of things to seek that, and they will do it a lot of times shamelessly. We live in those 5 things pretty much well define our society today and our cultural values, at least in the United States. At least that's what they present us as. They are, is the pleasure, possession, power, position, and applause. And we don't even realize that we've been placed in a position, placed in a very precarious position, because we're surrounded by it, and it's been normalized and told to us that these are the things that we need to go after, that these are the things that are worth chasing. But this entire book is about why that's wrong, why that is not true. And the thing is, if we actually look at history and we look at our own experiences, nothing ever came of it at the end of the day. Nothing ever positive comes from the pursuit of those things. He then goes on. He kind of talks about how they just started to form in his youth, and that was very important. Just to see them kind of progress. He talks about the jobs he wanted and the reason he wanted those jobs. He didn't care about the actual role in and of itself. He cared about the prestige, or he cared, he said a tugboat captain, which was heroic, exciting job. Or it would not only bring pleasure, but applause, right? Like people would respect him for it. And then it was a ferry or what was it? Ferry boat engine mechanic, right? And that would bring him applause and gave him pleasure, or gave him applause, a sense of importance, right? Position. And that drove his first career choice. That drove the reason he tried to go into engineering first. He said he doesn't even know how he passed that. And then he was in engineering and he hated it. And he had a line in there about he got close. He made better friends with the barkeepers, I think. From then on, I became more intimate with barkeepers than with my professors. He just started to avoid it completely because he didn't actually want to do the work of being an engineer. He didn't want to put in the effort or have any appreciation for the job he was doing. He wanted the results that the job would bring him, right? He wanted the money. He wanted the prestige. He wanted the positions. He wanted the pleasure, the applause. He was looking for all of these things that the job would bring him, but the job itself was nothing he actually wanted to do. And he ended up failing out of school, which I relate to. I did once or twice myself. I think 3 times at the end of the day. And his father got frustrated, and he said, "What do you want to do?" And he just said he wanted to be a journalist. So he went to this prestigious school of journalism, right? And he said something important here. Tie up loose ends here. They offered a most liberal education covering a wide range of subjects on the theory, I believe, that a newspaper man should know a little bit of everything, which is probably true. This scattering of knowledge left me mentally a mass of loose ends. There was no course in college to weave these strands together in a new and connected philosophy of life. I came to the conclusion that life was going to be nothing but a jolly struggle for existence, a survival of the fittest, and devil take the hindmost. Very well, I thought. If life is going to be a struggle, I will show them how to struggle. I relate to that, right? It's just like, I'm going to get the best for me out of this terrible existence I'm in. I will land on top of a pile of money with bigger, better home than my neighbors, with membership in more exclusive golf clubs and ownership in more resplendent automobiles, possessions thus hooked up with pleasures, applause, power, and position, and became one of my 5 pagan gods. Wow. Possessions thus hooked up with pleasure, applause, power, and position, and became one of my 5 pagan gods. Does that relate to you? Like, you have to ask yourself this. Honestly, do you relate to that understanding? Do you relate to that statement, right? Like, these were the things that I decided were going to be important in my life, and I will pursue them because they become your gods. And then he talks about how he went into journalism and he realized the money wasn't in journalism. It was actually in advertising. And that's where he stayed. And that's where he stayed. And that's what it talks about for the next 20 years. He says he was doing advertising and things like this. So the drinking got in his way. This is a person that did have a problem with drinking as well. So it's relevant to 12-step recovery and sobriety in that sense from substances and alcoholism. But really, this is a book on spiritual living, not just recovery from alcohol and drugs. So just to keep that in mind. But it is important to point out that the drinking's a big part of this first chapter, this first story, the first chapter in this book. and how he used drinking early on to start I'm just here for me. I'm here to feel good and enjoy the party, right? So he didn't like school. He started drinking. Got in trouble because of drinking too. So he talks about how he eventually got married, and because that's what he was supposed to do. And he did it solely for selfish reasons. He wanted to throw parties, he said. He wanted someone to take care of him. He wanted someone to just really just be at his beck and call for his own selfish pleasure and reasonings, right? A wife, I felt, should prove to be a great convenience around the house. I mean, that's probably one of the most selfish things I've heard. I mean, it's not even identifying as an individual. It's just like you will function as a tool for me. And though a marriage brings certain dynamics and certain roles per se, that might benefit both, right? But there's a whole lot that goes into it more than that. I'd like someone to take care of the house around me. There's a lot more to it than that, guys. So, he even says, I had been much annoyed by the fact that my family went away for the summer. Having become a working man, I could no longer accompany them, found it most irritating in their absence to run out of soap. Meaning, like, they weren't there to just take care of him all the time, and he couldn't go with them when they left. So he needed someone else to take care of him when his family would go on vacation, So, and he wanted to throw cocktail parties and everything else. And how did he say it? Marriage thus became a new adventure to me, an adventure in devising and demanding comforts that I had not found in the midst of a somewhat straight-laced and old-fashioned family, right? So, and then he talks again about how drinking also seemed to like an adventure at the time, playing drums or leading orchestra at a nightclub, delivering a drunken lecture on temperance from the bar of a saloon, arguing with a doorman who didn't want you to carry off a box of trees from in front of the establishment. Right. He's living a hedonistic, selfish, self-centered life solely based around gratification of his own pleasures and ego. And that's where this, pleasure, possessions, power, position, and applause come in, is they're all self-serving. They're all to project this image, to make this picture of himself, all of these things. So, and he grew quite fond of alcohol, it seems. He says on page 15 here, where once, however, alcohol appeared to make lights brighter, music sweeter, colors fairer, women more beautiful, and men more companionable. Right? So that's what it did for him in the beginning. I began to find that I had to drink not simply to heighten the pleasure of the lights and the music and the companionship of men and women, but in order to stand them at all. So things are starting to turn. Right? So the things that he used to use to accent his life and enjoy in his life have started to become priorities and needs in his life just to be able to endure it. And if you talk to anybody that struggled with substances or alcohol, that is a story that you will hear over and over and over again. It's in 98% of people's stories as they come in. And they talk about things and they continue to learn and grow, right? So I began to get my first suspicions that something must be out of gear in the commonly accepted scheme of things. He started to realize something's off, right? And it's just kind of how it goes and how it progresses. It is this discontentedness with life, this irritability, this feeling that something's wrong. I'm not feeling good about what I'm doing, right? That it's a little seed that starts growing, right? So, there was going to be nothing to look forward to except perhaps the making of still more money, the acquisition of wives, perhaps some other fellows. Why worry? The whole engulfed in the drinking of still more liquor. I began to feel, in short, that the pagan aims and purposes did not and could not represent complete success in life. So he says pagan aims here like he knew. It almost sounds like he knew back then, but he obviously didn't. But he's starting to realize the things he's living for on a daily basis, they're hollow, they're empty. It's always a pursuit of more when it comes to them. And this is where he starts to really become involved in trying to find something a little bit different. I tried to figure out that really to succeed in life, a man should not succeed not only in business, not only in marriage, not only in holding his liquor. There's the three biggest things, right? But in doing something with himself. So like accomplishing something for yourself, not just getting a bunch of money and a bunch of cars and a wife and drinking all the time and having sex with whoever you want to and whatever, right? So you must accomplish something. So he should, let us say, develop his character, right? So this is an important part, actually. Sorry, I've got some notes written in front of me that I like to use. But he likes to sit there and actually try to develop his own character in a inventory type of way. If you're familiar with the 12 steps, he says, I felt that my character possessed many negative attributes, such as fear, anger, revenge, and pride, and that it also held many positive personalities, such as poise, good nature, sympathy, and understanding. I tried to make a chart of these things, showing which qualities fell on the positive side and which on the negative. This was accompanied by a scoring system through which one could measure progress in developing the positive side of personality. So he really did try to make an effort at this and try to develop his character in certain ways, but he quickly gave up. And he said, as an old tutor of mine once said, however, my boy, you are never try to write anything till after you are 40. You won't know what life is all about till then. He was right. I soon gave up my effort and turned to see if in actual practice there was not something more worthwhile I could do with my business, my home, and my drinking. So he realized something was wrong. He sat here and he's like, I'm going to try to improve my character. I'm going to inventory it, what's good, what's bad. And he just gives up because it's overwhelming and he realizes he doesn't know what he's doing. And then he's like, well, I'm just going to try to get some purpose or some development out of my work and all these other things, my business, my home, and my drinking. Things he's already been trying to get some life out of already. So he's going down the same paths again. That might sound familiar. And the funny part is he tried to find more deep-seated purpose in his actual work, right? He tried to find more deep-seated meaning in what he does for a living. When it was earlier in the book, I didn't read the actual thing, but he talks about how he would write deceptive stuff and he would actually practice these other things, and he would... Sorry, I had to pause right there. There's some noise going on in the background. But earlier on, he was talking in the chapter. He talks about how he really knew what he was doing was inauthentic, and it wasn't actually crossed the lines. Right? He one time wished he could apologize and hope he didn't hurt too many people by the lies he was talking about. So he knew what he was doing was wrong. But he didn't actually change that. But he tried to make it seem like it was better than it actually was. Right? He said, he says, but its social aspect as a necessary link in the mighty chain of American merchandising, right? That sounds pretty magnificent, right? To give it some overinflated sense of value and purpose when really you're just writing ads, lying to people to get them to buy things they don't need that won't have the effect that you're telling them it would. Especially in those days, the regulation was so low, so he could get away with whatever, really. So, but this is how he's going about doing this. He's trying to just take his life as it currently is and mentally twist things to find more meaning, to make himself feel better about what he's doing, it to give himself more purpose and meaning. That's really just lying to yourself, trying to make yourself feel good, right? He didn't, and then he talks about just like how the logic of the whole thing didn't make any sense when he was doing that. But it began to look at the home as not simply as a comfortable liberty hall for a man's convenience and pleasure, but as an institution and a bulwark of the ideas of a free-thinking society, right? So he's just his home is now going to be this place of intellectual development and growth, and with great ideas and all of this stuff. And it did not occur to me that this was one of the most arrogant lines of the whole thing. I began to think of it a duty that we of the better and more intelligent classes, which was in quotes, should bear a greater number of children to offset the influx of uneducated immigrants. It did not occur to me that the self-centered snob might prove no safer than for the future of civilization than any particular brand of society and self-centered communist. I like how he actually has the recognition, but his actual honesty about that, right? Because there's a lot of people that might not have that exact thought process, but have a similar one. And it's quite an arrogant thing at the end of the day to think anything of that line. And his admittance and recognition of the flaw in his own thinking is so important there. Did not occur to me that a self-centered snob might prove no safer for the future of civilization than my particular brand of society, than a self-centered communist. Right? Like, so he's saying, who am I? How am I to know that my ignorance and my arrogance would be any better for the world than what they bring? And then he goes on to talk about alcohol. He is the key to life, really, here. The approach to a man's inner and finer thoughts, I declared, comes only when breaking through of his reserve with 5 or 6 slugs of whiskey. And 5 or 6 slugs of whiskey are necessary to release his flow of soul. It represented alcohol, in other words, as necessary not only to the stability of society, but to its uplift. So he takes his job and say his advertising is important to society and the development of society. He takes his position and his overinflated ego and justifies him having more children because he's better than other people and he needs to spread that seed. And then he takes his drinking and says he needs to drink so he has all these good ideas. And without drinking, no, you can't have good ideas. There's a part in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that talks about how alcoholics will sit and justify their drinking, saying the smartest people or the geniuses of time were alcoholic or whatever. And he's going right along with that. That's what he's saying here too. So it's pretty funny to see. He doesn't change what he's doing to give himself more purpose. He just mentally tells himself what he's doing has more purpose than he realized, if you frame it differently. It's the ultimate form of self-deception and false ego inflation. It's horrible. So earlier on, I didn't talk about it, but he was able to be blessed with a very quick and rising career. So so we go to this next line here. We're going pretty long here. Sorry, guys. Then, too, despite my early rise in business, I also went through my early losses, and the business prospects soon dwindled into certainty that I was not going to be able to accumulate a fortune enabling me to retire within 20 years. As for the social and economic value of the advertising profession, I could see that it had degenerated into nothing but an effort to stretch markets and to stretch them again and again in an utterly selfish, utterly childish, and utterly hopeless belief that we can make them big enough to soak up all the junk our manufacturers want to pour into them. My work, in other words, had lost all its color as a gay and exciting adventure in the romantic struggle of life. It was stripped of all false pretense. As a valuable and necessary instrument of modern distribution, it became rather an unpleasant means of keeping myself in golf clubs and cars in an occupation in which I might escape from other thoughts and obligations. So he's just seeing, no matter how much you dress it up, it's still going to be a failure. It's still going to be a loss of, it's still an empty pursuit, a hollow existence. And doesn't really accumulate or produce anything in his life that's worth talking about. And he saw the lack of integrity and the disingenuous nature of his job too. So he talks, and like this next part is very important, and many people can relate to this. I know I can. Drink too, of course, is an escape from work or lack of it, and I finally was ready to admit it. A lot of us use alcohol or substances or any other types of addiction to actually get out of ourselves and to escape our current circumstances, to have just a flash of a different reality for a moment, because we can't handle what's actually going on, or we're so aggravated or despondent or irritated or disappointed with life, we can't we need something to get through every single day. So my home, in other words, became something to escape from. My office became something to escape into. My alcohol became the alley of escape I chose when both home and office got unspeakably upon my nerves, and that I turned to cocktails and knockout drops in order to forget the whole sorry business, right? Wine and Xanax, whiskey and painkillers, beer and booze, or more so, booze and marijuana, or just any of those individually works too. Like these, we're talking just the desperation of just trying to get some sense of relief from a substance outside of yourself, because your life is so chaotic between your home and your business that you can't handle it. And I'm trying to remember, but well, either way. So what this is accumulating in is the pursuit of the 5 P's have just left him with a life that really he just wanted to escape from, and there was no reason to be even a part of anymore, right? So he was stripped, and then it talks about, I think soon after this, wish I had written it down. Okay, yeah, so there it is. He starts talking about what the real purpose of living is, right? And he talks about Albert Einstein was certain that man is only here for the sake of other men, right? And then he quotes Confucius as well, to follow what the heart desires without transgressing what is right. Right? So like to be here to serve, to be of service to other people and institutions. That's what we're here for. And that's what he's coming to the conclusion of. And then he says this later on too. Again, oh wait, here it is. All of this I felt was because so many self-made men actually self-ruined, which is a substantial shift in perspective, right? So these men that had achieved so much at so many of the things that he was actually trying to achieve himself, he actually considers himself ruined now. Had spent their lives as I had in chasing false gods. They had chased these 5 P's. And when, in 1929, the stock market went down and all 5 of my false gods rose all 5 of my false gods rose up and deserted in one body, I determined to seek the real meaning and purpose of life before I again took up the business of living. How quickly those things abandon him, right? So the Great Depression happened. Well, actually, I think that was a little bit earlier. Yeah, check the dates. But this is around the time of the Great Depression, right? And suddenly, all of that goes away. Everything he worked for in his life, everything he gave, that gave himself the value that he desired, was gone, right? And he was like, I was determined to seek the real meaning and purpose of life before I again took up the business of living. My old aims of pleasure, possessions, power, position, and applause could be won and permanently held by no man. These are all temporary things. They're not something to invest yourself in for a permanent sense of security, safety, love, worth, value, anything. They're always temporary. If all these supposed friends could so easily be put to rout by a mere business panic, if all desire for these aims ended with their fulfillment and they became no longer desirable, right? What he's saying there is, once you get them, they're gone anyway. You need more. It's just constant more. You could get 1 million, you want 1 billion. You get 1 billion, you want more than that. You get this car, you need another one. You get 1 supercar, you need 40 supercars. You get 1 house, you need 5. And it just becomes the pursuit of enough. And there's never enough when you're living in that lifestyle. If their pursuit by hundreds of other men for hundreds of years had resulted only in chaos come again, what gods of a more faithful nature and enduring value could one live for? So I think that's an important point too. Those 5 P's he named have been the default things to be pursued by people since the beginning of time, most times, right? They're the most commonly pursued things. Those are the gods that people worship, regardless of what other religion or claim, right? Those 5 P's. And it's resulted in chaos and disorder, and especially right now, look at society now. It's resulted in mental health problems, physical health problems, all of these things. The pursuit of those 5 P's has resulted in destruction and chaos. And he's saying, well, what is the real things we need to pursue? What are we here for? Where do we go from here? And then for a look at the rest of the book, I determined to answer these perplexing questions once and for all, and I sat down to think it through and write a book. And that's the end of the chapter. And this is the book he wrote. So we have 17 more chapters after that. And chapter 2 is the business of thinking things out. And false god of philosophy, I believe, but the theme is philosophy. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to bringing you some more information. So in general, the overview of this is just trying to use those 5 P's to fill that hole in the soul, and realizing after enough of a vain pursuit that is not the way to do it. That those things will always and forever will be temporary. They've always been temporary, and we need to do something else. So I enjoyed the overview. I hope you all enjoyed it as well. Thank you for joining me for this. I greatly appreciate it. And I will be back again next weekend to do the chapter reading for chapter 2. And what was it again? Sorry, the business of thinking things out, right? Yeah. So thank you for your time. And until next time. Thanks.